Hello, my name is Rick Hetherbridge, and I'm here today to talk about tennis and specifically to do a preview of the French Open. But before I do that, for any of my fans who have watched the past podcasts, they know that I did one a couple weeks ago for the US Open, and I predicted that Dominic Thiem would get his first Grand Slam win, and he did. So very happy for Dominic Thiem. And little proud that I was able to make that pick. Okay, so let's move forward to the French Open, and specifically let's focus on the men's draw for now. And I'm going to start by dividing the draw into a few categories. The first category is what I call favorites. And so the three favorites for the French Open in order are: number one would be Djokovic, number two would be Nadal, and number three would be Dominic Thiem. So those are my three favorite picks going into the French Open, and let's take them one by one and sort of see, statistically what they have going for them and why I'm picking them in the order that I am. So let's start with Djokovic. He has 17 career Grand Slams. He hasn't lost a match this year in 2020. So he won the Australian Open. He also won the Masters events in Cincinnati. He also won the Masters event in Rome. And his only blemish this year is the US Open. He defaulted. Now, I don't really consider that a loss. But it's certainly a blemish on his record, and I'm sure he is really frustrated about that because he had a really good opportunity to win his 18th Grand Slam. And, this is an unusual year for tennis because of COVID-19, but I think that Djokovic is in a position to claim that he's had the best year of any player in the history of tennis. Assuming that he can go on and win the French Open. He also, I think, has something to prove a little bit to himself, right? It was he showed really bad judgment in getting defaulted at the US Open. And I'm sure he really regrets that and would like to win the French Open and do it with good sportsmanship, to sort of get the bad taste out of his mouth from what happened at the US Open. So let me be a little more specific as to why I'm picking Djokovic ahead of Nadal. And I know Nadal's won 12 French Opens in the past. And I know Nadal has 18 Grand Slams, one more than Djokovic. But let me explain why I think that Djokovic is going to win. And I think there's a couple of factors that are in his favor. First, the draw is in Djokovic's favor. So Dominic Thiem and Nadal are on the same side of the draw, which means that they'll meet in the semifinal. And the winner of that match would, if things go as planned, play Djokovic. I just think that that's an extremely difficult thing to do. Whether you're Nadal and you have to beat Thiem and then Djokovic back-to-back, or whether you're Thiem and you have to beat Nadal and Djokovic back-to-back, it is extremely difficult. And I think if you look at the Grand Slam tournaments, you'll see that very few players have been able to do that, right? To beat two out of the top three players back-to-back in order to win a Grand Slam event. So the draw is definitely in Djokovic's favor. If the draw went according to order, number 4 ranked would be Medvedev. However, he's a much better hard court player than a clay court player, and I don't anticipate that he'll get to the semifinal, but I do expect that Djokovic's semifinal will be much easier than the Nadal-Thiem match. There's another factor that I think is really important, and that is the weather conditions. So instead of playing in May, which is what they normally do, they're playing in October, and it's colder, and that affects the way the tennis is played on the clay. So it's going to be, the ball is not going to move through the court as fast, and it's not going to bounce as high. And both of those things are a bigger problem for Nadal than they are for Djokovic. And let me explain why. Nadal hits with tremendous topspin. And the big advantage that he gets out of that is he gets a very high bounce. And of course, it's hard to hit that ball. When everybody who plays tennis knows, if you get a ball up around your head, that's a very difficult shot, at least to hit with a lot of power. However, in this colder weather, the ball's not going to bounce as high. It's going to allow players to either take the ball earlier against Nadal, or get the ball lower, around their shoulder, which is a ball that they can hit with much more power. The other problem for Nadal is that he doesn't hit the ball quite as flat as Thiem does or Djokovic does, and it's going to be harder for him to hit winners. His ball just won't move through the court quite as fast as either Djokovic or Thiem's. And the truth is that Djokovic has better ball placement. He's just able to hit the ball more precisely than Nadal. And that may be what you have to do to win a point at the French. It won't be easy. There's one more factor that I think is in Djokovic's favor, and that is that he's just had played a lot more matches, and he has a lot more match experience right now than Nadal does. And think about it. Think about how confident Djokovic must be, right? He hasn't lost a match this whole year. He started the year by winning the Australian Open. After the COVID-19 break, he immediately goes to Cincinnati and he wins the Masters event there, right? He then wins the Masters event in Rome on clay. And he's obviously playing really well, and he's really confident. Nadal hasn't had that kind of year. And the fact that he didn't play the US Open, I think, will hurt him a little bit in terms of not being as match ready as Djokovic. And I think the fact that he lost to Schwartzman at the Rome Masters, and that then Djokovic beat Schwartzman in the final at the Rome Masters, definitely gives Djokovic a psychological edge over Nadal. So for all of those reasons, that's why I'm picking Djokovic to win this French Open. And I know that Nadal has basically owned the French Open for the last 12 years. But those are the reasons why I'm picking Djokovic. And I'm even thinking that Dominic Thiem, who's my number 2 favorite, has a very good shot at beating Nadal as well. So let's talk about Dominic Thiem's qualifications. So he won the US Open, his first Grand Slam win. He's got to be feeling amazing about that. And I think there's something that happens after you win that first Grand Slam event, and it sort of frees you up. It allows you to go for it a little bit more and hit out on the ball a little bit more and not feel so much pressure. And I think a good example of that is Andy Murray, right? We all know that Andy Murray lost his first 4 Grand Slam finals, right? And then after he won a Grand Slam event, was able to successfully win, I think, 3 more. And so I think that there is a benefit from getting that first Grand Slam win. I think it benefits your confidence. And I think that Thiem will be in a really good, have a really good mental attitude going into the French. I also think the weather conditions favor Thiem, right? He hits a flatter ball than Nadal. And I think in terms of being able to hit winners in a cold surface, where the ball's not moving through the court as fast, that Thiem is going to be better able to do that than Nadal. So I think Thiem has had a better year so far in tennis, and I think that the weather conditions favor him, and because of that, I'm making him my second favorite. Okay, so let's move on to Nadal, and I don't think I've ever said this about Nadal in the last 5 years, but he is my third favorite. Of course, he has 18 Grand Slams. And of course, he's won the French Open 12 times, more than any other player, more than any other player has ever won a Grand Slam event. However, this has not been a good year for him. He has played one prior clay event. That was the Masters in Rome. He lost to Schwartzman in that event. So he doesn't have a lot of matches in terms of his match experience, and he just hasn't played that well. And again, I'm going to go back to the weather conditions. I think, one of the big things that makes Nadal so difficult to play is that when he hits the ball with the tremendous topspin that he does, he gets that high bounce. And it means that as a player, you either have to back out and let the ball drop, in which case you're playing way behind the baseline, or you have to try to take that ball early. But when you try to take that ball early, if it's up around your head or above your shoulder, it's just a very difficult shot to hit with any kind of pace. So the fact that it's going to be colder and the ball's not going to bounce as high, and the fact that he just doesn't have the confidence or the match experience. Look, Nadal has always been the king of play, right? And he's always played a bunch of clay court tournaments leading into the French. So he plays Monte Carlo, he usually wins there. He plays Barcelona, he usually wins there. He plays Madrid, doesn't always win there in Madrid. That's, I think, one of his less favorite clay surfaces. He plays Rome, and he usually wins there. So he's usually played 5 clay court tournaments prior to the French, won most of them, and he comes in with tremendous confidence and is virtually unbeatable at the French. But that's not what happened this year. He didn't get a chance to play his 4 or 5 warm-up tournaments, and he didn't win any of them. And I think there's also a psychological thing that you have to address as well, and that is it's a little different for a Grand Slam champion like Nadal to play an event where there are hardly any fans. Now, let's talk about that. At the US Open, there weren't any fans at all. My understanding is that they've made a decision to allow 1,000 fans to go into the French event every day. But, in a show court that holds, 10,000 people, 12,000 people, that's not the kind of crowd that you're used to. And what it means is that there is an adjustment to that, right? That a favorite like Nadal, who's used to getting a lot of crowd support, won't get that crowd support. I'm not saying that he can't win without that. I'm just saying that it's another factor that you have to adjust to, and that the players that played the US Open and played the Cincinnati Masters, they've sort of made that adjustment. They've sort of acclimated to the idea that they're going to be playing these big matches, but there's going to be nobody or very few people watching, and there's not going to be a lot of crowd noise or support. So I think that's another thing that will affect Nadal a little bit. Okay, well, so that's my sort of take on the French Open. I'm really looking forward to the 3rd Grand Slam event of this year. I think it's a great thing that there are going to be fans, even if it's just limited to 1,000 spectators. I was someone who had planned to go to the French Open this year when it was still planning to go on in May, and I'm looking forward so much to being able to actually go live to some of these events. And it's a step forward if the French Open can have 1,000 spectators every day, and there's no issues with COVID-19. Then hopefully that means that other events as we go forward can gradually have more and more fans. And I know that a lot of us fans are really anxious to be able to go back out. And of course, for all of us people who live in SoCal, we have the BNP Paribas event in Indian Wells in March that we all like to go to. And it would be really great if we could all go to it this year. So we'll just have to see how we do in terms of having fans at these events and figuring out ways to do that safely, and so that 2021 can be more of a normal tennis year than this year has been. All right, that's my take for the men's draw.